This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. Today is edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We were glad you're here on a Wednesday afternoon. I am Cesar Delgado. I am your host of today's program. I'm joining with Mark Bakker from Bakker Precision Planting in northern Illinois nearby Jelen. We were talking about the grain safety and precision planting with Mark Bakker from Orangeville, Illinois. Mark is the owner of Bakker Precision Planting in northern Illinois nearby Jelen and Wisconsin with his son Chad. And then I will have a conversation about grazing with Dale Strichter from Regenerative Wisdom. This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois. We were talking about the grain safety and precision planting with Mark Bakker from Orangeville, Illinois. Mark is the owner of Bakker Precision Planting in northern Illinois nearby Jelen and Wisconsin with his son Chad. Mark, how are you in your planting season in northern Illinois?
Doing well. I mean, the crops are hanging in there despite the lack of moisture, but still looking good.
Great to hear that. Mark, let's discuss about your business to the technology of the Parisian planting. Would you like to be telling our audience on the technology in the cab?
Absolutely. The precision planting, I mean, we are still the on the forefront of leading in technology in planting. It just seems that uh, the technology just evolves every day, every month. So it's exciting to be in this industry.
What other services you provide?
On the Baker Precision Planter Works, precision planting, obviously, we work on sprayers. That's a newer venture for us, doing not nozzle by nozzle control with the cameras also. And then obviously we still work on combines, on the yield monitors, and doing a great job on that, very accurate.
Cool. Technology is awesome when it works.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Very detailed. We have a very good staff, technicians that we have work with us in our Baker Precision, and it's important to keep our farmers moving in the time of need and keep them knowledgeable and trained on the up and coming equipment that they have currently and what's available.
I know that you're a volunteer firefighter in Orangeville. What is your thoughts on the grain safety in the Midwest, especially in Illinois and Wisconsin, Iowa, etc.? What is the importance of the grain safety?
Well, the funny thing is that I keep thinking that we're going to run ourselves out of a job. My company is a State Line Farm Rescue. Grain rescue is such a popular class, and it's only because of the entrapments and the deaths that occur in grain bins. A lot of our problems that we're seeing is out there in the farms are would be the farmers are doing more, have bigger equipment as far as their grain facility. Augers are moving more grain faster, elevators are moving grain faster. And I think a lot of it is because the farmers doesn't have the amount of manpower they need, so they're doing a lot of shortcuts and stuff they're doing on their own. So they're not having the manpower. So they're working by themselves. Yeah, the fire services are recognizing the need for this training, and being proactive, and so it's just a very good program that we run.
What is your advice?
We're teaching classes all over the Midwest, and a couple of them, we did one in Indiana last month, and we're going to be in August doing another one, and both of these classes are coming after the fact, and they had a death in their county of a farmer being entrapped, and so that's disheartening. You feel like you're late to the race on this one, but yet it's hopefully helps with the closure on this, because it's very hard when you lose a farmer in your community, because everybody is impacted by that, and not only that, the family's impacted financially and overwhelmed by it, and the rescuers and firefighters, they're emotionally attached to, they know these people, we all know them, and so it's just hard for everybody.
Of course, Mark. Can you tell us about your farm operation in northern Illinois with his son Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a family farm. My wife and I started starting to age myself 40 years ago. We're in a little town of Orangeville, about 700, and we're a kind of a rare breed. We still dairy farm. A year and a half ago, we put robots in, the robotic milking. It's been such a learning curve, if you will, but an exciting direction to go. We grain farm also, about 1,800 acres, and corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and we seem to stay pretty busy with that. We also do custom foraging, chopping, and then, of course, with the Baker Precision Planter Works and State Line Farm Rescue, that pretty much consumes my time, and I'm okay with that because I enjoy what we do.
What's generation of your farm, Mark?
My wife and I are first generation farmers. Obviously, I actually have two boys. Zach would be my oldest, and he's on the dairy side of it, so he's kind of pretty low profile, if you will. Chad's on the precision side of it, and I'm very fortunate. I have five grandkids coming up, so I can see where the future is going to go, and it's looking pretty doggone good, to be honest with you.
Cool. Good to see that. Do you have any final thoughts on the planting season for this year?
I think a lot of the crops got in at a very timely manner this year. I think in northern Illinois, at least southern Wisconsin, the planting conditions were, I would say, excellent, better than I've ever seen. The emergence was very satisfying. Everybody was very happy with that. I think our biggest setback right now, though, is rainfall, and moisture. So getting timely rains is probably gonna be our only way to make it through this season. We are very depleted in our moisture. So, but I think the customers that we work with, got their equipment ready early, got everything going good this year, and because of that, I think their planting season went pretty rapid. I'd say, for the most part, the 2 to 3 weeks in our area, and everybody was pretty much wrapped up. So I even seen guys that were done, rather large farms that were done before the 1st of May. So that's kind of a rarity. So that was. I'm looking forward to the harvest, because guess what? That's the report card. So we'll see how it looks.
I enjoyed our conversation for today. Thanks, Mark.
Absolutely. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be part of your podcast and your program, and I really appreciate that opportunity to tell my story.
Land management is important to the ranchers and cattle farmers in central Illinois. However, there is a catch for management of the rangeland, though, about the weeds control and grazing with the calf operating systems for the livestock producer. We were talking about it with Dale Sprichter from Regenerative Wisdom out of Wichita, Kansas. Dale, how are you?
Great.
Okay, Dale. Let's discuss about the grazing management for the livestock producer. What is your advice on starting up with their grazing management program?
I think the first thing you want to do is educate yourself. I mean, anytime you're starting a new enterprise, learn as much as you can and seek the counsel of people who have already done it. And not just technical advice, but emotional support, because anytime you do something different, there are people who will want to ostracize you. I mean, they'll ridicule you. Uh, it's just human nature. And it takes some emotional support sometimes to get through that. But there are so many people who have moved on to better grazing management, rotational grazing and legume interseeding, and that it's crystal clear this works and is far more profitable than the way we've traditionally grazed. There's really no reason to not go down this route. I've heard every excuse under the sun, and none of them really hold water.
What do you recommend within cover crop and grazing management program, Dale?
So cover crops can be the nice thing about grazing cover crops is when you look at when that grazing is available, it tends to come at times of the year when our perennial pastures are either not productive, not nutritious, or really in need of a rest. So the cover crops that we'd grow on cropland tend to come. I mean, there's either winter cover crops, which provide grazing in late fall and early spring, things like cereal rye, and our perennial pastures are not productive in late fall and early spring. And then the other time is in late summer. If you were to plant cover crops in wheat stubble, for example, or some other small grain that's been harvested, then that could be like Sudan grass or cowpeas or sun hemp or millets. That comes at a time of year when, in your part of the world where you have primarily cool season pastures, they're just not very productive in July and August, September. And having a place to move those cattle allows that pasture to rest, recover, and it puts the animals on a type of forage that they're going to gain better than they would otherwise on if they were just left on pasture. So you get better pasture performance, you get better animal performance, and having that cover crop in the crop rotation helps your future crops perform better. So it's really a win-win-win all the way around when you're using grazed cover crops.
That's true. In Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota and to some parts of North Dakota. They are grow some corn and soybeans, same thing like in Iowa, Illinois. Could you tell our audience about the row crop production for your specialist in the regenerative agriculture? Some farmers are different than others.
Yeah. So one thing that I think has been a bad trend is that we've tended to become more specialist. Um, we tend to look at only 1 year and say, what's going to make us the most money this year? And I understand the economic pressures to do that. But a corn soybean rotation really is not very agronomically sound. It's too short to allow diseases and insects of those two crops to dissipate. You really want 2 years out of a crop to have a good rotation. July and August, that's devastating to corn and soybeans. But if you already have your wheat crop harvested and in the bin, it's not that big of a problem. And yeah, you at least had one crop that made really well. And having all that wheat straw on the ground, having that improved soil structure from the long rotation gives you an additional measure of drought tolerance the following year. So if your corn and soybeans are growing on ground that grew wheat the year before, or if your corn is all planted on land that grew wheat the year before, you've got an extra measure of drought tolerance that you wouldn't otherwise have. In far western Kansas, the only way they feel they can grow a successful corn crop is to grow that corn crop no-tilled into wheat stubble to hold moisture. And that's the only way they feel they can successfully pull it off. So if you look at those lessons from very dry area and apply them to, more rain-fed areas, then the principles still apply.
We got to have your final thoughts on the land management. What do you recommend for these grazing management on herbicides on pastures?
Usually, now I'm not going to say that you never need pasture or never need herbicides on a pasture, because I have used them myself, particularly for brush, trees. But when you switch from continuous grazing to rotational grazing, the more frequently you move those animals, the more pronounced this effect becomes. But the animals just start eating weeds. I don't understand why that is, but they do. And I didn't believe it. I never believed this to be true until I saw it on my own cows on my own farm. Once I started moving cattle daily, they started eating weeds, and weeds that they had never touched before. And I always thought that was just some tall tale that people were saying about rotational grazing. But once my own cows started doing it, I became a believer. And I still don't understand why they do. I just know that they do. And I said it's a lot like when you pull up, if you go into the Pizza Hut buffet and you're the only person there, you're going to walk around that table 3 times and try to pick out your very favorite thing to eat. If, however, you're standing at that buffet table and you hear the screech of brakes and you look out the window and there's a school bus and the high school football team starts unloading, you're going to grab whatever you can while you can, or you might not get to eat at all. And it seems to work that way with cattle. they just eat whatever's in front of them. And I've got side by side pictures where cows are eating all kinds of plants that we assume that cattle don't eat, things like hackberry trees and buckbrush shrubs and dogwood shrubs and all these ironweed, all kinds of plants that we assume that cattle don't eat, but they do. I even have a friend whose cattle eat musk thistles like they're candy. And it's because he moves those cattle every day. They're not starving by any means. They're not eating the last little green. He leaves a very tall stubble when he leaves a paddock, but the weeds just disappear. Now, once you've done that, then the weed control becomes. I have a hierarchy of questions on weed control. Number one, people ask me all the time, said, what should I spray to kill this weed? I said, that's the wrong question to ask. A better question is, how can I kill this weed without herbicide? And the other one is, the best question is, how can I turn this weed into money? How can I encourage my animals? And maybe I need different animals. Maybe I need goats. Maybe I need sheep. Maybe I need chickens or pigs to add in with that cattle herd to utilize those plants. But it's amazing when you change the grazing management, how many plant species we used to consider weeds all of a sudden become feed. And I went from spraying my pastures constantly, trying to kill every last weed, to not really worrying too much about it because I knew my cows were going to eat them.
This is follow-up question, Dale. What is your thoughts on the cattle prices into the feeder? Is there any concerns about these prices with the grazing producers than corn feeder cattle producers?
There's when prices are low, you're worried because it's like, how am I going to make things happen? When prices are high, you're also worried. It's like, when are these things going to crash? Because right now we're looking at very high prices. It's nice to have high prices for a change, but it's also a source of worry. And I guess one of the things I'd recommend is don't get too greedy. And if there was ever a time in the cattle market where it would make sense to, lock some prices in, use some hedging or options to make sure that your downside's protected, this is probably it. But I'm a big fan of the Bud Williams buy sell marketing strategy, or sell buy marketing strategy, I should say. Where if you're buying and selling on the same market, you never ever really get hurt. So sell one group of cattle and buy the same day, and just that way, if prices are high, you're buying high, but you're selling high on the same day. If they're low, yeah, you're selling low, but you're also buying low on the same day. And if you're always buying and selling on the same market, you're never really going to get too hurt. It's when we try to get greedy that we tend to get burned. And so, again, I like hitting a single every time at the plate rather than swinging for home runs and striking out. And same way on marketing livestock. It's when we get greedy hold those animals, trying to hit the high of the market instead of taking a profit when it's offered. You'll never go broke taking profits. You go broke trying to hit a home run and missing your opportunity to sell at a profit. So I guess that's my best advice there. Also, if you are a low cost producer, if you can reduce your input costs, and I know that's easier said than done, but there are ways. I mean, I've written entire books about this. Become a low cost producer, and that way you're kind of insulated against, if you can make money at the low of the market, you can make money at the high of the market. And so just become a low cost producer is my best advice to dealing with markets.
Of course. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Caesar.
This
Good
is
spending
Dale
time with you.
Strichter from Regenerative Wisdom on Back Roads of Illinois. Thanks to Mark Bakker from Baker Precision Planting and Dale Strichter from Regenerative Wisdom. I am Cesar Delgado from Back Roads of Illinois. You have a great day.